starting off we've got Postal 2, which is well known by people familiar with the FPS genre, but I think that most gamers have probably never even heard of it. It's a game with a simple premise. Your character is someone simply called the Postal Dude, and the game involves you carrying out mundane activities like buying milk or cashing a paycheck. Usually after you complete one of these activities, the area is taken over by a group of people who will pretty quickly start shooting the whole place up, Postal Dude included. This could be a group of rednecks, Middle Eastern terrorists, or violent video game protesters. Now what makes this game so offensive is the amount of options you're given in killing anyone stupid enough to go up against you. From simple melee weapons like shovels and nightsticks through to dousing people in petrol and setting them on fire. You can pretty much do anything you want, just expect the authorities in the game to take notice if you do. Postal 2 overall is very similar to Grand Theft Auto in a lot of ways. It's just much more scaled down and with a lot more bad taste, but it doesn't stop it from being an enjoyable game for people who don't have a stick up their ass and can enjoy the satire and toilet humor.
Does our little pachyderm pal want to show his appreciation?
Now we're getting a bit abstract with Quest for Saddam. Now this was a game developed by Portrayal Entertainment in 2003, which runs on the build engine. In this game I guess you're an American Marine or whatever in Baghdad trying to hunt down and kill Saddam Hussein. Now there's only one enemy in the game, which is a basic soldier type enemy that shouts out some random mumbo jumbo when you're spotted and does a horrible job at fighting back. There's only a handful of weapons in the entire game, all of which are just lazy, reskinned versions of weapons from Duke Nukem 3D. The assault rifle, for instance, is just a reskinned pistol, and the machine gun replaces the ripper cannon. They couldn't even be bothered replacing the shotgun model at all, and the pipe bomb uses the proximity dynamite sprite from Blood. If nothing else though, Quest for Saddam is at least playable. There's some areas that show off the destructible environments made capable by the build engine, and all things considered the shooting isn't bad, it's just that it's too easy and kinda boring. In 2006, the global Islamic media front, say that 5 times fast, made their own version of this game called Quest for Bush or Night of Bush Capturing, which is almost the exact same game except they've replaced Baghdad soldiers with American soldiers and the final boss is now George W. instead of Saddam. This is the video game equivalent of someone saying, "I know you are, but what am I?" The only thing is this time around the game is at times unplayable. I mean, it performs alright, all things considered, but the mouse sensitivity is way too high and the controls are janky as hell. Also, the AI for the US troops is just brain dead. They'll often stand still in your direct line of sight and not even attack you, but maybe that was intentional. Both of these games take anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes to complete, which is about how long it feels like the developers actually spent working on it. Moving on, we've got Ethnic Cleansing, which is easily one of the most offensive games on this whole list, mostly just in terms of how bad taste the whole thing is. This one was developed by a group called Resistance Records and puts you into the shoes of a neo-Nazi going around gunning down Mexicans, African Americans, and Jews. There's only 2 levels in the entire game. There's the city streets and then a subway station before you come up against the final boss, the former Prime Minister of Israel, in a small room that glows red with stars of David all over the walls.
You filthy white dog. You have destroyed thousands of years of planning.
Ethnic Cleansing might at least have had some kind of value as being so bad it's good, but the fact the game takes itself so seriously is more concerning than humorous. You got Mexicans walking around with sombreros and ponchos, you got African Americans wearing basketball jerseys and dressed like stereotypical gangbangers, and then the Jewish enemies you come up against in the subway are dressed in their typical kippas and shawls and shout out oy vey when killed. I mean, you can't make this shit up. With only 1 weapon though and 2 levels, the whole thing's over in about 10 to 15 minutes and it feels more experimental than an actual game. What I think is ironic too is that the Genesis engine, which powers the game, was also used for the religious games Catechumen and Ominous Horizons, a couple of games about religion versus a game about neo-Nazism. A couple of years later, they also followed up with another game called White Law, which is a third-person shooter where you're a SWAT officer or something, going around shooting people with a pistol. And it's even more of a piece of shit than Ethnic Cleansing is, if you can believe it. Zog's Nightmare is in a similar vein to Ethnic Cleansing, where you're a member of the National Socialist Movement expectedly going around killing Jewish people and African Americans. Like Ethnic Cleansing, this game is a total piece of shit, but what makes this one even worse, yes, it gets worse, is that it doesn't even have the traditional features you'd expect in a game, like being able to change the default controls or changing visual settings. When you're playing the game, you'll notice that weapons seem to float in the air, and it looks like your weapon is magically reloading itself because your character has no hands. The enemies all move around so quickly it's near impossible to hit them, making this game just stupidly difficult as well. On that note, I'm not too sure why they've made this game so hard. I mean, if you're making a game that's nothing more than propaganda, then wouldn't you at least make it easy to finish? Or maybe that's like the whole point, like they're trying to simulate how unstoppable they really think the supposed Zionist occupation government actually is. There's also a sequel, Zog's Nightmare 2, but the only place selling it is a neo-Nazi site that's asking for $18, which is about $18 more than I'm willing to spend. I mean, I'd rather spend $18 to get someone to kick me in the taint with a steel cap boot. I'm also worried about what sort of people might be monitoring the purchases on that website, and I really don't want to play the game that much. Hands down, the most offensive game on this list is JFK Reloaded, which is just so offensive I don't even really want to spend all that much time talking about it. Without getting into the controversy and conspiracies around the shooting itself, this is a game that puts you into the book depository where Lee Harvey Oswald supposedly took his shot from, and tasks you with assassinating John F. Kennedy as his motorcade drives past the window. The reason I kind of despise this game so much is that it's based off an actual real-world event. I can overlook games like Ethnic Cleansing because they're largely not based on real people, but making a game off one of America's greatest tragedies is just utterly abhorrent. The footage you're looking at here is the one and only time I've ever played this game. But I don't want to end the video on a downer, so I thought I'd finish out the list with what is another offensive game, but also an immensely playable game, that being the awesome Gretzo 2. Gretzo 2 is a game that firmly flips the middle finger at Italian cultural figures, religion, and just about everything else decent it can get its hands on. Originally a Doom 2 mod, it's now its own standalone game, and it's a pretty hefty download, which is justified considering how much stuff has been crammed into the whole thing. From the dozens of weapons available to the player, the cheesy MP3 soundtrack, the multitude of sprites stolen from various other sources, it's like someone's taken a bunch of different assets, thrown them all into a blender and slopped it all down into one single game. In the very first level of Gretzo 2, you're killing elderly folks in a church with a flamethrower, before turning into some kind of werewolf that shoots fireballs as you battle it out with Jesus on the cross. But what makes Gretzo 2 stand out amongst the other controversial and offensive games is that it really just is a total blast to play, and I think it's quite tongue-in-cheek and self-aware, which really does make it much more enjoyable. And it's the only game aside from Postal 2 that I'd recommend playing out of this entire list. If you're the type of person upset by the way that women are portrayed in the Grand Theft Auto series, or worry about which pronoun to use when you meet someone for the first time, then this probably isn't the game for you. In fact, none of the games on this list are at all. Part of what makes gaming enjoyable as a hobby for me is that I'm able to play games like this and not take them too seriously, and it's part of what makes it such a fun pastime. In the same way that you watch a movie like The Exorcist and go home and know that you're not going to wake up with Pazuzu standing over your bed. I know I can play something as ludicrous as Zog's Nightmare and know it's not going to turn me into some kind of neo-Nazi. I guess my point here is that I hope people don't take anything too much away from this video, except having a bit of a laugh at how bizarre the gaming industry can be at times. Anyway, that's my list of some of the more controversial FPS games ever made. If you can think of any games I might have missed, then please share them in the comments section below. And if you'd like to see more of these type of videos, then let me know as well in the comments. Thanks for watching.